If we don't talk about money, we're going to lose the battle, right? First thing, not going to show the interest of what we do. Second, we'd always been battling with people that think they have the right to use our budget for their own sake and having no responsibility if actually it fails.
Hello, we're Global App Testing, and this is Building Globally, Lessons in Enterprise Product Growth. This is the fastest growing, most exciting podcast in product, and we will be looking at every single angle on how you can grow your enterprise product by talking to professionals in some extremely exciting businesses. On with the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Building Globally, Lessons in Enterprise Product Growth. Today, we're excited to have Fabrice de Mazery with us, a formidable force in the world of product management. Formerly the Chief Product Officer at The Fork, part of the TripAdvisor Group, plus having led product strategies at Deezer and others. We are going to be talking about everything ROI in product development, all the way through to fostering a culture of innovation within product teams. Welcome, Fabrice. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me, Adam.
Just to sort of start, I'd love to just explore some of the things that you talked about in your recent speech at ProductCon. You talked about VC-style bets. You talked about the investment and capping principles. Could you just explain a little bit? What were you talking about? What did you mean by those things?
Yeah, definitely. Let's start with the beginning. Product has been invented to actually take the tech from a center of cost to a center of profit, right? This is why we were invented right at the beginning. And the thing is that for the last 10 years, especially in Europe, I've seen so many product people doing what I call product explaining, which means talking about all the frameworks that we have, product discovery, design thinking, shape, or whatever. Whenever they were asked questions by business people around, okay, I need that feature right away, or why have you chosen that instead of this in the roadmap? And that just didn't work, right? And in a way, there was a problem of understanding what we do, because product is not about discovery, delivery, whatever. Product is about investing time, which is actually money, because we're a product team. A large part of what we do is actually building things at HR cost and making the right choices in terms of investments. This is why I talk about VC-style bets.
What do you mean by product explaining there? So can you give me an example of product explaining for me?
Well, I'll give you an example. Whenever people would actually go with a business case around, we need to migrate this to Embrace, for example, and they might come with plenty of, we know, unrealistic figures, because there's never been a business case which was honest. It doesn't exist, right? For plenty of reasons. So you have an optimism bias, or you think that everybody's doing that, so you have to, right? Else your demands will never be considered. And we used to either say, we're going to put that on the backlog, hoping that people will forget, or we say, no, it's complicated, we need to do discovery because we're not sure, etc., etc. And when people will push you to take a commitment, right? They have commitments, honestly. They have targets in terms of close deals, targets in terms of click-through, for example. And they will push you to make commitments. You usually answer, yeah, but it's complicated. So it looks like an excuse for people to say, okay, but these guys and these girls, they never commit to anything. And the only thing that we think they could commit to, which would be a date, right? Because for people that don't work as developers, it looks easy, looks predictable. And even on that, the answer is usually it's complicated. So this is what product explaining is about. The only explanation that you give is not answering the questions that people are currently asking, or answering on things that they are not interested in at all, which is how to do discovery. Nobody cares but you.
So besides sort of a general greater focus on ROI, what specifically are you advocating then? You're talking about thinking about your role as a product manager as a sort of series of bets. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you have 1 million euros or dollars a year to invest as a product team, right? You could say that it's not only the product manager doing it. It's a team thing. But at the end, the average cost for 1 year is $1 million. So you're given $1 million by the company. The idea is, what do you make out of these $1 million? And this is a question that anybody in the company would be asked for. Is okay, I'm doing 1 million in marketing. What could be the ROI? Or branding, or I don't know, operations. You need to show at the end that you've used your budget for a benefit of some sort. So the first thing for me is whenever you think that way, you need to commit to a result that could be usually at the end of the year that is connected to a strategic outcome. If you don't do that, if you just build features because either someone asked you to, or you think it's going to be delightful, or it's good for the user, yeah, that's great, but that's not what you paid for. You're here to make money, not to do strategy, discovery, or design thinking.
And when you say that it's venture bet, am I correct to infer there that what I sort of think of with venture capital, where you've got one successful bet pays for 20 failed bets, is that the kind of I don't know, sort of success distribution, or are you even advocating for that kind of approach, or is it just a more sort of general, you should make bets with a view to make money back?
No, I think it's quite realistic, to be honest. So maybe it's less risky than what you do as a VC for plenty of reasons. You have more control over what you do, and the kind of money that you invest, in a way, is not, you don't have to put money back another round. So it might be quite different, but the general idea is definitely this. There's plenty of uncertainty for two reasons. First, there's market uncertainty. You never know how people will actually buy, how the other competitors will act, which kind of feature that's going to develop, and you're not, right? That's not something that you can master. The other part is that what we do in product is that we build things to discourage or encourage behaviors. But you're playing with human behaviors, right? By definition, it's unpredictable. We might want to say that we are perfectly rational, but we know people are not. So you never, ever can commit to anything saying either 100% certainty that if I do this, I would have this exact outcome. So the basics to say, maybe I would do 10 investments in a year, right? And maybe one would be this unicorn investment where I want to put more money in because I see there's a lot of traction. And maybe after 2, 3, 4 investment, that's going to be okay. It's going to be on track. And some others could be a bit, yeah, not bad, but less good than what I was actually expecting. And that's okay. Anytime that you want to commit to any investment being a success and being a success as you saw it right from the beginning, and the way you're lying to yourself and you're lying to the company.
The primary tool of communication that product managers as a sort of team have, besides sort of talking to people and internal advocacy, is this idea of the roadmap. I wonder what you think of that as a way of communicating, as a way of explaining value and intent, and how you think somebody who's in a product management team where they sort of generally do public announcements and advocacy through this kind of roadmap model, how they could adapt that to make a kind of clearer case for their own ROI.
The first thing is there's a big mistake when it comes to roadmaps, is that you only take as roadmap a kind of commitments of some sort on that could be committing when it comes to release planning on saying we're gonna put that out at this specific date. And sometimes, sadly, you have companies that want a 1 year long release plan. It's not a roadmap anymore, right? The second problem I see is that there's no perspective when it comes to roadmap. So if you only share a list of things, whatever you call it, that could be now, next, later, whatever the format, it lacks the view of, okay, these were the objectives that we had for 2024. This is exactly the point. So these were the points that we wanted to invest in. And so you need kind of a focus, right? So you need a map in any way to explain why you're going to invest on this specific metric, this specific area, these specific users with clear figures, and connecting that to the product strategy or the company strategy. And always refer to that. Else, if you only share a roadmap, people will look at whatever is the evolution that they're interested in. They will completely lose any information around the thing that they haven't asked for. And they will go on asking you, why is my thing late, for example? Which is not what you hear. You're not here to say, I'm on time. You need to say, at the end of the year, I've created plus 10% of revenue on this specific segment. So maybe it's late, but it's not a problem because that's not the objective. Even if I understand that it can be frustrating, I'm not here to please you. I'm here to make money for the company. The second thing is that people tend not to put a dollar or euro figure when it comes to roadmap, which I think is a big mistake. You should always remind people that this is here to make money. There's a potential behind that. And third thing, if there's uncertainty, you need to show an interval, right? So don't say it's a $6 million opportunity or $12 million if you don't actually say it's going to be between 6 and 12. 6 is the worst case scenario. And we will try to reduce that interval if we can by doing some discovery. That's what discovery is about. If you only say it's 6, people will think right from the beginning that you're going to deliver 6, and you don't know that. So you need to advocate for discovery, saying I'm here to limit the risk that this worst case scenario will actually happen, right? And nobody wants that this 12 million potential euros or dollars transform into 6 because we haven't spent 1 week asking questions even there to customers. So in a way, if you start with money and you put, when it comes ROI, risk, uncertainty that anyone can understand when it comes to investments, then you have kind of a business case to do your job, which is finding the right way to actually build something or discarding it if at the end you see after 2 weeks that it's not going to deliver the ROI that we expected. So in a way, it's how products should be made, not the other way around.
Do you think, though, so it strikes me that predicting ROI, certainly predicting ROI on bets that you're going to make in 6 months' time, strikes me as exceptionally difficult and very kind of finger in the air. So it would make sense that product managers would then end up limiting the amount of predictions they were going to make because they know that actually in the end, the person above them will look at them and could use it as something to criticize them with. That, you know, in the end, they're going to be wrong, probably. And then, of course, working out the ROI of their past work is important, but is also a kind of retrospective activity that's distracting them from the things in front of them. So with those two things said, what advice would you give for a product manager thinking, I want to be more ROI driven and I want to communicate what we're doing with ROI better, but I actually don't really know how to calculate that, how to work that out in a way that is predictable and useful for the organization?
Well, the first thing is that, just like you said, you cannot predict too much in advance. You can project saying that you have a low confidence in the results, and that's okay if you educate people around this confidence thing. So we know there are frameworks like the ROI score. I hate how people misuse the ROI score, but the idea of confidence is something which is interesting because it actually tries to factor that part, saying, yeah, maybe it has potential, but right now, I would actually discount this potential by 80% because it might be just an idea. So I need to do a kind of due diligence, right? That would be not going to take 3 months, but might be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on the size, the appetite that I want linked to that investment. So don't do 3 weeks if it's a 3-week investment, right? I mean, absolutely, it would be worthless. That's the third thing. The second thing is that whenever you do that, you need to make sure that you create the link between product metrics and the business outcomes. And usually it just missed in translation, right? So you're going to take a look at creating engagement or delight or working on critical user journeys on the UX and product usage data. But you don't correlate that with the potential outcome. If you don't correlate that and just people saying, yeah, if we do this, it's going to make this amount of money, that's completely lie. Maybe there's a link. But if you cannot prove it with data, there is no link whatsoever, right? So for me, it's a twofold thing. First thing, factor the uncertainty. Second thing, make sure that whenever you have opportunities of investments, you have ways to actually predict that if you go, I'd say 10% up on engagement on that specific part of your product, for example, I don't know, you're working for Tinder and you know that you need more engagement from female users, and you know that you have 10% more engagement, it's going to be more monetization for male users. If you can prove that, in a way, it's pretty easy to compare the different opportunities. If you cannot prove it, yeah, that's just a guess. And do you want to drive your whole business based on guesses? I'm not sure.
When you bring the kind of language of investment to product, then I guess you as a product manager, the rational way to behave would be to want to, in every quarter, have a series of bets that were different risk levels, right? And I wonder whether is that what you would think of as best practice? Is it that you're like, you should have a bet that you're pretty sure is going to have a return? You should have a couple of moonshots. You should have a couple of medium level risk things each quarter. Maybe that's the appropriate way to do it. Maybe you could argue that would change the product manager's behavior in a way that is undesirable. Something that you could kind of call similar to sandbagging, I guess, if you're starting to delay product bets into the next quarter because you know that you have these things that you're pretty confident are going to have a high ROI in the present. What do you think about the way that it could affect behavior in the way that I just described?
But I think it ties to the culture of the company, and it ties to the kind of personality the product manager has. Because I could tell you that usually I have a rule of thumb, which is, okay, we have low-hanging fruits, 20-25% of that. Low-hanging fruits could be, just like you say, think with low risk, low ROI usually, but micro optimization. And that could be what we call enablers. So migrating marketing from this to Braze, because if you don't do it, they cannot act on it. So it's kind of indirect. And sometimes you have to accept that, well, it's needed. So it's kind of a compromise, right? But it's not going to change the game. You accept that 20-25%. Then you have 60%, 65% of what you do. That should be around strategic outcomes, mid-level risk, mid-high sometimes, and more uncertainty, but more ROI potential. And then there are what I really call bets for me, which are moonshots. If you don't have a good, I'd say, portfolio management of your investments, at the end, it's kind of risky for plenty of reasons. The first thing, if you don't do any moonshots, you're going to be disrupted, and you want to invent the future of the company. If you don't do enough enablers and you just push for new things, you know that some part of that, well, it's going to be too risky to actually make sure that you're going to reach the level of ROI that the company wants. So just like you would do with your own money, right? Say, okay, yeah, I need to get this part, which is 2%, 3%, right? But that's okay. I need a little part of that in case, okay, bad things happen. Right? And the thing is that you never know what's going to happen on the market. We had COVID. Some people say we had AI. We had other crises before. So you need that. And sometimes when you do moonshot, after 2 weeks, you see that, okay, never going to happen. Okay, it's never going to. So either you really start something back from scratch, but sometimes you're not ready to invest in the next opportunity right away. So having a backlog of low-hanging fruits is something which is good. Because say, let's do some discovery on the next opportunity. On this, we don't do a lot of it. So we can produce ROI, we don't lose 4 weeks, and we don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy, which is, but we invest in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so we should invest more, right? So in a way, it's kind of balance that you need to keep, but you need to keep that with the culture of the company in mind. Meaning there are plenty of companies when it comes to being pre-product market fit. Everything is a bet, right? You don't do macro optimization. It's really bets. When it's an older company, you might not have the ability to do moonshots because there's a innovation lab of some sort. I just find it a bit sad to say that some people are innovating than the others, but that's reality, right? And you need to consider your team and who you are. Some teams are what we call platform teams. They work to build a platform for the other teams to work on, okay? Usually what you ask to these teams is scalability and efficiency. It's not risks. You're not going to transform the world. You might do some big refactoring in a way, but it's never going to be a moonshot, what we call a moonshot. So maybe you will never have moonshots here. It's never going to be low-hanging fruits and a little bit of strategic outcomes. And last thing, who you are. And there are so many people who actually lie to themselves about the ability to take real risks. And we're not made equal on that. Sometimes you even change. When you're young, usually you're more prone to make risk, right? Maybe because you're more unconscious of the consequences. When you're more mature, or you're more willing to think a little bit things through, right? So there's no perfect way of looking at a portfolio. To recap, linking that to what you have as opportunities, what is actually the objectives that you have, what is the culture of the company, which kind of team you're in, and who you are. And this would define how you make investment strategy, just like we do, going back to that, with your own money.
It's super interesting to hear you talk about the tension between what the business needs in the short term and in the long term, because my concern about thinking about ROI, not as a product manager per se, but as a product leader, as the person managing that team, is that if you walk into a team of people and you start saying ROI, 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 low-hanging fruit, then I would imagine, and I wonder whether you agree with this, that what you get is greater short-termism. What can we do to turn things around quickly? Incrementalism, where you're going, what can we do to affect a small part of the, have a localized experiment rather than take the big picture into account, and not working as cooperatively with other teams, where you go, instead of trying to achieve a market position in coordination with sales and marketing, what we're going to do is we're going to increase user signups by 20% because we're in charge of that. We're in control. And that's not always what the business needs, right? So with that in mind, how do you as a manager encourage a general focus on ROI without the downsides that I just described?
The first thing is allowing people to do that. And that comes through being there to challenge them whenever they think of opportunities. So for me, that's the first thing. It's not about, is it the right solution or is it the right design or whatever. The first thing for me is trying to connect people with the priorities that we have. And the priorities could go through, we need that short term, because if you know the EBITDA positive in 6 months, we're dead, right? That's part of it. And as a leader, you need to remind people that this is real, okay? This is dangerous. I had to, sadly, fire 130 people because of that. And definitely you don't want to do that. If I had to avoid it, and I would largely prefer, instead of going through that, because usually people are not really directly responsible for that kind of decision. So it's kind of unfair, right? But that's sometimes what you have to do. You got to do what you got to do. So you might need this kind of things. The second thing for me is making sure that it's connected to the P&L, meaning that, as I told you, we've kind of, product people are optimists, okay, by heart. If you not an optimist, you're never going to be in product, because it's always about thinking that what you're going to do next is going to make things better in any way, right? So sometimes you have, especially with young people, or especially sadly with designers, sometimes developers, a way of saying that will be better if, yes, but would that be better for the user and for the company at the same time? And people lose that kind of connection. So for me, it's not only about people doing some incrementalism. It's too about making sure that whenever you think of making the experience better, you can actually prove that it's going to make the business better. The third part for me is pushing them as a leader to say, there might be something interesting here, and I can actually help you not build a business case, but actually pitch it and make sure that you have a safe space here to build that. Usually people do hackathons, for example. Hackathons, well, sometimes it's about that. Sometimes it's just a way to replace the foosball. Sorry, we say baby foot in French, so that was foosball or ping pong table or whatever, right? Say, okay, do a hackathon, we're never going to use it, it's never going to build a product, but that's just a way to lessen the pressure and think that, yeah, we're cool, we're doing hackathons. Bets can be built on hackathons. They can be built on design sprints. If you want to design sprints, why not? But it's to make sure that they have this possibility to reinvent things. And sometimes, and that's personal experience that I had at the Fork, the best way to do this is actually to push the other people, marketing, sales, to participate to hackathon, because it's usually only done within product engineering, right? So I need to push people to do these bets, to reinvent things, even if it's going to be capped, meaning that, okay, you have 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to show potential. But that's a way to, just allow the organization to think in real moonshots. The last thing I would say is that I spend time with my teams making sure that they are ready to make this bet, that they are ready to face the risks of failure, that they are ready to consider that they will need time, but they need to limit that time when it comes to discovery, saying, are you okay with spending only 10 days on that? Because it's not a big opportunity. I don't want you to do some design thinking for 3 months just because you think that it can be great. No, it's 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, whatever test you haven't had time to do, you're screwed. So even you say, we're going with that or we stop. But I don't want you to invest more and more and more until they're risking this opportunity. It's not worth it. So it's here to enable them to make sure that you repeat which are the priorities of the company, make sure that they have the ability to do bets, trying to create the structure for them to do bets, and make sure that, it's safe to fail. Going back to that, it's going to be a bit cheesy to say, but it's okay because you have other investment that can compensate for failure. And that goes back to saying, just like what you asked right from the beginning, it's okay because you have 2, 3, 4 other investments. It's not the end of the year. Yes, it's disappointing, but that's okay. You can compensate that in the future. There's no reason why with the other investment you shouldn't be able to actually match the target, right?
You obviously come to this with a sort of strong point of view. I wonder if there's anything you could share or an anecdote from your own career which helps explain why you feel this way, or a decision you'd like to revisit if you could go back and talk to your younger self. How is it that you've come to sort of feel this way about ROI?
Well, there's 2 reasons. First is that I used to be an entrepreneur and I never raised any money as an entrepreneur. So that was my own money, right? So in a way, you feel much more responsible when it comes to budget. And that was a kind of a choice for some reasons. And when I was working at Mazery, we raised $170 million. So I've known both sides, right? But in a way, with your own money, you make drastic choices. And it's hard sometimes. Sometimes you say, okay, do I really want to make that bet? So you really think through it, right? Thoroughly. The second thing is I've seen for the last years this irresponsibility when it comes to money, not only on the product side, but on the business side too. For me, I'd say business side, but I definitely think that product is a business department. It's not a tech department or whatever, it's business. But I'm going to take an example. When sometimes from a country wants something done, it costs them absolutely nothing to do it. Right? So say, I want this done because I have this specific customer or prospect that asks for it. There's absolutely no cost on the sales side. On the product side, you will have to look through it, ask for information, maybe do a little bit of discovery. You would have to battle to do discovery around an opportunity that might not be worth it, might not be tied to the focus that you have, etc. Imagine that you're doing it, right? You're doing it and it doesn't work. Same thing, no cost for the sales guy at all. All cost for you, because it's money that you cannot invest on something else. And at the end of the year, you're going to be pushed. And if you have to make cuts, maybe you got to cut your budget, not the sales one. And that's the same thing for marketing. I remember having a conversation at Deezer with someone for marketing, and they were pushing for 5% engagement as an OKR, plus 5, of course, as yearly OKR. And I just asked, okay, so we have 5 big personas representing 20% of our user base. We cannot just build something that's going to be plus 5 for everyone. So which persona do you want us to work on? Which would be the priority? So he didn't know. Say, okay, let's take this one. Okay. So if I want plus 5%, it means plus 25% because they represent 20%. Why don't they listen to more music right now? What is blocking them? Because plus 25%, that's huge, right? So in which word could we create something that will actually allow them to listen to 25% more music? And why don't they do that right now? So sometimes you have this irresponsibility when it comes to, first thing, pushing OKRs because you need OKRs and sexy, never connecting that to product usage, that first thing. And then pushing the others, which are product engineering, to invest their money, their budget in something that you want. I don't imagine anyone from product going to talk to marketing saying, I want to use 20% of your budget on this specific profile because I want to build, or I think that could be great. And actually, I talked to an agency and we're going to do a campaign because we want to. That would never exist in a world. So it's this kind of a asymmetry, just like, I don't know, considering that, yeah, we have developers, you have to pay them, so you need to keep them busy, right? So for me, that was this kind of shock saying, okay, if we don't talk about money, we're going to lose the battle, right? First thing, not going to show the interest of what we do. Second, we'd always been battling with people that think they have the right to use our budget for their own sake and having no responsibility if actually it fails. So that would be the 2 big reasons. If I take one example of something that I went through, I was working in a fintech company, and as a fintech company, in front of you, so it was a B2B SaaS, we had credit managers. So credit managers love figures. They actually love to have any reporting that they could think of. So there were 2 demands. First, one thing that I said absolutely no, and I'm happy that I did it. A second part that I'd say yes, and I think that was completely wrong. The first one was, I'd like you to allow me to change the way that I do my export. So I want this column here, this column there, and I want to do it all by myself. And that was stupid. It's like, you can build a macro if you want. That's actually going to be cheaper for us to, as a team, to build a macro for you and for any customer than actually building an ability to do something that Excel masters are doing, and you can do it all by yourself. But that's me, because we were embedding a software in it, it's a BI software. I won't quote them, but that's one of the big ones within the product, because our current ability to create charts was very limited and people couldn't play with it, right? And I was forced by the salespeople to create a blank one, where people would say, okay, whatever you want, you can build it from scratch, and say, oh, wow. The problem is that it's so complicated, considering that people don't know, and credit managers don't know how the data is actually structured in their company, and especially when it comes to our software. They don't know anything about that. So they would try to create something, but they would not take the right KPI, or they would not subtract anything that they need. And they would not be able to create exactly what they want. It creates a lot of frustration, So there was absolutely no use. And even the sales say, yeah, but that's great to sell. When I asked afterwards, a lot of companies that actually bought it and used that module to be able to play with it, none of them saying that the blank thing was really the reason why they changed it. Never, because a large part of them were saying, we still export that to Power BI, Tableau, or whatever, but it's just for people when we don't have time. We want to see quickly without having to do an export. So we're never going to build something from scratch. We're going to build that in Power BI on Tableau and going to be helped by people in the company. So for me, that was the biggest mistake that I made. I listened to it. I didn't really push for it because I thought that was a great idea. I thought that people will actually like it.
Yes. And I think in a way, it's also the best investment advice you can give, which is don't write blank checks.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us. I've had an amazing time, and we'll be back in the new year. Have a Merry Christmas, everybody listening to this. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Building Globally was brought to you by Global App Testing. To find out more about how best-in-class functional and UX testing can help your product grow, head to globalapptesting.com. If you enjoyed what you just heard, click follow on the platform you're using right now. Building Globally is available anywhere you get your podcasts.